I haven't posted in a minute because I'm depressed. Dink. But you know what's not depressing? Carowinds. They got some great rides there.
Let's talk about amusement parks, like rides and rides in the dark. Rides right here and rides all over, but mostly coasters, mostly coasters. We'll talk about all kind of things, but mostly coasters.
Located smack dab on the border between the two Carolinas, Carowinds is home to more roller coasters than any other park in the South. Currently, the park boasts 14 rides of the rolling and coasting variety, but coasters are not the only ride type this park has to offer. Carowinds provides excitement to guests of all ages, with a beautiful and tame Camp Snoopy Kids area, some nice middle-of-the-road thrilling flat rides such as these, and some truly heart-pounding contraptions that will make even the most seasoned park goer experience a spike in their heart rate. In addition to all of those dry rides, Carowinds also offers a full water park. So picking just 10 out of their vast collection was definitely not the easiest thing to do. But enough blabbering, let's get into the list. Kicking things off, we have the slowest ride in my top 10, Boo Blasters on Boo Hill. And if this ride seems similar to other rides out there that you may have been on, that's because it is, with several other parks having their own version of Boo Blasters. Boo Blasters is an interactive dark ride that takes you through a whimsically spooky ghost house where your objective is to blast as many targets as you can. In addition to earning points, hitting the targets also triggers various effects and animatronics. This is of course a huge upside to the ride, but unfortunately it does come with a downside as well. If you aren't able to hit the targets, or if you have technical issues with your blaster, you might miss out on some of the really fun and cool surprises of the ride. But regardless, these glowing set pieces are still really well done. This is definitely a nice break from coasters and thrill rides in the park, and it's one of the few rides that remains open during inclement weather. So it's a worthy number 10. At number 9, we have Ricochet, a relatively standard wild mouse coaster manufactured by Mock Rides. And I'm not at all saying that it is standard as a diss. I love wild mouse coasters. They're just very common. If you have been on any wild mouse coaster before, you'll likely already know what this coaster is like, but I do think this one is slightly above average. Judging based solely off my one ride on Ricochet, the breaks throughout the ride definitely don't seem too sensitive, so you take those sharp turns with quite a bit of speed, resulting in some fun lateral G-forces that wild mouse coasters are known for. The additional turns and dips of a wild mouse are always fun as well. The one thing to be wary of about this coaster, as with any wild mouse, is the low capacity. Definitely get to this ride early or late in the day if you do want to ride it, as the lines for it can build up quite quickly and move quite slowly. But it is a solid, fun family coaster nonetheless. Next up, we have a ride that is certainly not for the whole family, Vortex. And straight out of the gate, I gotta tell y'all, this coaster was a lot better than I expected, and a lot better than I think people will give it credit for. Vortex definitely gets a bad rap in the coaster community, and I definitely don't think it is fully warranted. I guess I'll just start off by addressing why it does receive flack, and that is the standing aspect of the ride. Standing on a coaster definitely is not my preferred method of riding, but in defense of Vortex, stand-up coasters were a gimmick at the time it was built, and they're really just a product of their time. You really don't see new stand-up coasters popping up anymore. Thankfully. And the reason that standing up on this ride in particular is a bit tough is actually due to the coaster's biggest strength, its intensity. Vortex is a relatively small coaster, but it packs in a very healthy dose of positive G-forces, as well as a couple of aggressive whippy moments. Those positive G-forces are definitely a bit much for your legs to endure while standing, but it isn't too uncomfortable. Another positive is that Vortex rides on the track quite smoothly, So that really helps any of the negatives be much less noteworthy. Overall, I do quite enjoy the fast-paced and compact layout of Vortex. Oh, and this is definitely another one that you should prioritize before a line builds up because dispatches can be quite slow due to the nature of loading a stand-up coaster. Dang, I know it probably didn't sound like I like this ride all that much, but I do. I just wanted to be fair and address and sort of jump ahead of the critiques that it has. Anyway, at number 7 is Screamweaver. Now, if Vortex focuses on positive G-forces, then Screamweaver is obsessed with them. This is a classic Enterprise ride, and despite this ride model being around for nearly 50 years, this was actually the first one I have ridden, and boy have I been missing out. This ride is a bit disorienting to say the least, but if that's what you're into, then it's a blast. The ride is essentially just spinning you in a circle the whole time, but that circle tilts providing a fun combination of spinning and looping. And I will say it is extra exciting to experience the ride with a very minimal restraint system, as the centrifugal force of the ride is essentially what is keeping you in your seat. Moving on to number 6, we have Drop Tower, which is a drop tower. This is your typical Intamin early generation drop tower, very similar to the one at California's Great America. While this is an older model of drop tower, and this one in particular isn't notably tall, at just over 170 feet, it still packs a very strong gut punch. Drop Tower delivers an above average stomach dropping sensation as you fall with what feels like no wind resistance. And as you can imagine, it is obviously a short ride experience, just like any other drop tower. But I do love drop towers, so an above average one is definitely a winner in my book. Kicking off things in the top 5, we have Flying Cobras. This is a boomerang coaster, and never in a million years did I think a boomerang coaster would make a top 10 list of mine. Well, okay, other than this one. But I am very happy to say that Flying Cobras feels like a completely different ride than the typical torture devices that boomerang coasters normally are. Flying Cobras has received many upgrades over the years, with the most substantial being upgraded trains. The current trains for this ride use vest restraints, which virtually eliminate any possibility of hitting your head, which, if you are unaware, is typically a massive issue with boomerang coasters. And in addition to the head comfort, there is more back and butt padding than you'd typically find on a boomerang, so you can just focus on enjoying the ride instead of fighting for your life. As far as the layout of this ride goes, it's obviously not original, but I had definitely forgotten how fun the layout actually is. The 3 inversions are full of forces and you get to experience them forwards and backwards, and the unannounced first drop is so much better than I remembered. I'm so glad Carowinds put some work and love into it, and I think every boomerang should get this treatment. And if not, they should get this treatment. At number 4, we have a ride that is very forceful. Afterburn. This B&M inverted coaster offers an aggressive, fast-paced sprint from start to finish. Each of the 6 inversions has its own flair to it, providing a nice mix of positive G-forces and intense whip. The moments in between inversions are fun as well, as every other second on the coaster, Afterburn is trying to rip your legs off. In a good way, of course. The intensity of this coaster is comparable to that of Montu at Busch Gardens Tampa, and Batman the Ride clones at various Six Flags parks. The ride duration is a balanced mid-ground between those 2 examples, feeling neither too short nor too long. On top of all the awesome ride forces, Afterburn's setting helps contribute to the overall experience, with a good amount of trenches and trees to fly through to add to your sense of speed. And another thing that I appreciate with this ride, it is thoroughly enjoyable in every row. The train goes through the layout with such gusto that every row gets a similar amount of aggression. Yet, despite the intense nature of Afterburn, it still offers a very smooth experience, which allowed me to ride it multiple times without any issues. Afterburn is definitely a top-tier inverted coaster, and a very worthy number 4. On the opposite end of the coaster spectrum, coming in at number 3, we have Intimidator. This B&M hypercoaster is a bona fide floater airtime machine. Every hill has you gracefully, peacefully, joyfully floating out of your seat for several seconds on end. This ride is far from aggressive, especially for something over 200 feet tall, so that's why it isn't higher on my list. Itchy. Where was I? But I do have to give it credit where credit is due. The whole reason I go to theme parks is to have fun, let my hair down, and just smile. And boy, does this ride make me smile. It definitely is repetitive, sure, but that's because it is repetitively giving you a feeling of floating out of your seat. So I definitely see that as a positive. And just as a testament to how fun Intimidator is, I rode it more than anything else on my trip to Carowinds just because of how re-rideable and blissful it is. So yeah, it's insanely fun. I don't have a whole ton to say about it, to be completely honest, but yeah, one more time. It's fun. All right, now number 2 could very easily be a number 1 at many other parks. It could honestly be number 1 at this park, Copperhead Strike. This is just such a complete roller coaster. One of the biggest highlights of the ride is the phenomenal hang time. Like, man oh man, this coaster is one of the best out there for dangling you out of your seat. I think like 3 out of the 5 inversions hold you out of your seat for more than 2 seconds, which is just nuts. But in addition to that world-class hang time, you also have phenomenal air time, and I did not expect this aspect of the ride to be as good as it was. There's at least 5 or 6 moments of strong ejector airtime, as well as a nice mixing of less aggressive floater airtime hills. And then Copperhead does also feature multiple launches, which aren't the craziest thing in the world as far as the acceleration goes, but they do serve the ride well by maintaining consistent pacing throughout the over minute-long experience. And then one of the launches is an airtime hill in addition to a launch, so that is pretty cool and unique in and of itself. Another surprise to me was that Copperhead Strike was pretty well themed. The theming is mostly just still props, but there's so many of them, they add greatly to the ambiance of the ride, and there is also a pre-launch section that does have a mini show scene. So for a regional theme park, I was actually blown away by the fact that there was some storytelling going on with the ride, along with the ride simply looking nice. And of course being a phenomenal coaster to begin with. The only downside of this coaster, if I absolutely had to name one, is a slight shimmy on the track, but it barely affects the ride experience. So, what could possibly be better? Well, before we get to number 1, let's take a really quick look at the honorable mentions. First up is Hurler, which is simply too rough to have made the list. And the trim break directly after the first drop kills a lot of the ride's momentum, but it does offer a redeemable hill-filled layout that I think could really shine with a little bit of work on the coaster. Carolina Cyclone is kind of in the same boat, where it is good, but hindered by an uncomfortable ride experience. It is a classic and iconic coaster for the park, and it looks gorgeous with the relatively new paint job, and it is actually pretty enjoyable and smooth for its age, but the trains themselves make it really hard to enjoy the ride. They just have hard over-the-shoulder restraints and very hard seats. If this coaster just got some trains similar to Flying Cobras, I would enjoy this ride tenfold. As it is though, it's not the worst thing in the world, and I really do enjoy that last helix that is below ground level with those wooden beams flying over your head. And then lastly, we have the other Carolina coaster, Carolina Gold Rusher. This is a phenomenal starter coaster, but it is just that. It has the same cool trenches that Carolina Cyclone has, so it has some great visuals, but it's just not the level of excitement that I'm seeking out. It is, however, definitely worth a ride or two. And finally, at number 1, we have Fury 325. And wowee, this is a world-class coaster. Fury 325 has won a plethora of awards, and I think it is well deserving of all of them. This is one of the best designed coasters out there, and in a lot of ways, I do think it is the best coaster experience. Because it checks just about every box. It's high speed, fast paced, aggressive. It throws you around in every direction. I suppose it doesn't have inversions if you wanted to nitpick, but the ride's incredible sense of speed alone is enough to make up for that. Fury is obviously measurably fast with a top speed of 95 miles per hour, but it also feels insanely fast. It maintains its speed incredibly well up until you hit the final brakes. And it does take a long time for you to get to that point, as you have roughly a minute-long ride duration along over 6,000 feet of track, which is just so freaking awesome for a ride that is this fast and intense to be as long as it is. In addition to the ride speed, Fury has many sustained airtime moments, ranging from strong floater airtime hills to mild ejector airtime hills. At times, Fury also has good lateral forces, tossing you side to side, and a surprising amount of positive G-forces pushing you into your seat as well. I do not think I was quite prepared for how much this ride manipulates your body, but it does, and it's pretty freaking awesome. That being said, Fury is pretty comfortable for how much of a beast it is. All in all, this coaster does a masterful job of balancing being graceful and fun with being intense and heart-pounding. I love this coaster so much. I could go on and on about it forever. I'll stop here for now, but if you want to check out my full review of Fury 325 as well as all the other coasters that I talked about on this list, those links will be in the description down below. Go ahead and let me know what your favorite rides at Carowinds are. Make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe and turn on notifications for more content like this, and make sure to tune in next time for the top 10 days of the week.